Alright, so this video is going to be about bar lengths and generally why I'm using shorter ones. The visuals to this aren't going to be very exciting. I've just got some other work to do while we're talking about it. So I put up a short video about some yellow box that I cut the other day, a tree that was down. In that video I was running this 288 clone with the bar that's in the background here, which is a 32 inch 105 drive link 3/8 chain. While doing it, I ran into a lot of problems, which reminded me I should probably discuss it at some stage. So, you may notice that most of my saws are running reasonably short bars. I have done a video before where I explained some of my reasoning for this. There's another part to it that becomes quite difficult. So when you're cutting mostly very dense hardwoods, we have big problems with oiling. Now I was reasonably lucky because that tree, for the most part, was still had a fair bit of moisture content in it. So it wasn't too bad. When they're dry, they're a lot worse than that. But this is where we get into the conversation about what bar length should you use. Now that tree I was cutting, I ran the 32 because I got this bar for a reasonable price and it's in this mount. I felt like running the 288, so that's what I was using. The downside of that was this saw does not oil anywhere near enough to be able to pull that bar in hardwoods. Now, power-wise, so from the point of view of actual power, it was not a problem. It ran that 105 drive link full comp chain without a drama in the world. I know most people will look at it and say it's a clone, it's probably a bit crap. Honestly, the thing's got a Meteor top end in it. I cleaned up the porting, it's got a good set of rings, or a good ring in it. This thing has plenty of power. When I say plenty of power, I'm comparing it to other saws I own. I do have a 660 and an 880. This thing makes a lot, like a bulk amount of torque. It will pull a long bar very well from a power point of view. What it can't do is output anywhere near enough oil to be able to do it. What you got to remember when you're in these dense hardwoods like we cut here, the cuts are an extremely long process. To get the big end of that log right down the bottom there, I was running the 32 inch bar. I started on top and worked across the top, down the side, and then still had to go the other side to finish it off. Some of those cuts, we're talking you're cutting for 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. It wasn't cut into firewood lengths, it was only cut into chunks, but with also talking this is a 900ml fuel tank. I refueled this thing 5 times. So in American terms, I probably used 1 1/4, 1 1/3 gallons to cut that. So yeah, it's hard work. The problem you have is it's in the cut so long, it just starts cooking everything. There is not enough oil for it to be able to constantly maintain that much chain in the wood. So what happens is you have to sort of cut, release the pressure on it, preferably pull the bar out of the wood, run it for 10, 20 seconds at full throttle just to oil everything before you go back into the cut. I'm not sure if it'll show up on the camera here, but that's the chain that was on it. And it's just got all the resin and crap from the wood just burnt onto it from the heat. Now that's Husky S85 chain. It's really good, doesn't stretch. It took it very well. The bar's a old GB CN40, the titanium one, so they've got the titanium rails. The paint on their things has always been crap. They fall off the first time you use it. The bar itself, they tolerate abuse really, really well. So I wasn't too concerned, but it is annoying to have to constantly pull the saw out of the cut so you can complete the job. So that brings me to the point of why I have an 880. When I did this a lot, all the wood was like that. It was mostly dry, large diameter hardwoods. Because of that, you get the big problems with oiling. So you need a saw with a huge oil output. And really there's not that many choices left these days. I have an MS660 with a high output pump on it. It is very good. It can oil quite a lot. However, it's still not really enough for the longer bars in most of this stuff. So that's how you end up at a point where you see a lot of guys running things like an MS660 with a 20 or a 25-inch bar. Theoretically, it can run something much bigger, but it's just never going to be able to oil it here. Not in a suitable way anyway. You'll just end up tearing up bars, ruining chain. So it's not a practical solution. The only thing that really has enough oil output for doing that crap is the 880. So keep that in mind if you're in Australia. You're going to see a lot of recommendations on the net for different bar lengths. People will run things like the 562 Huskies or the 400, the still MS 400s with 25 or 28 inch bars. They just cannot keep up the oiling that's required for this sort of work. Even things like a 500 or a 462, they're just never going to be able to oil well enough to be able to pull it off. You also have the problem of, because it's in the cut for so long, the sheer amount of heat that it generates. Interrupted by a phone call then. So like I was saying, the other issue you have is the amount of heat that gets generated in the saw during the cut. This is where the really big saws start coming into it. Things like this, the 660, the 880, they tolerate it pretty well. Larger capacity, slightly lower revs, though will tolerate it to a degree. This is also where you start getting into guys running a lot of like 25:1 oil, just trying to put more oil in it. You can also tend to run these things a bit rich to try and help with the cooling. They're all pretty valid options. But yeah, just keep in mind all those recommendations you're going to see that guys will give you for bar lengths. You really need to judge what you're cutting. If you're still cutting green timber that's fairly young, in smallish diameters, you know, up to sort of your 20-inch or 30-inch logs, you're going to do all right with just about anything. They will tolerate it. Where the problems really come is when you get into this larger stuff, especially when it's dry. You're going to have a very, very hard time getting in a reasonable amount of oil up to the saw. So yeah, not a lot of great information there, just something I've got in my mind while I'm doing this. It was just a problem that I faced this week when I was doing that job. Other news, I ran the 288 because I felt like it. I do like this thing, even though it is a clone and most people hate it. Been buying more saws for the fleet that I really don't need. There's a 026 that was seen in the background of another video that's been rebuilt. It's good. It just needed some rings, cleaned up the cylinder. I bought my first ever real Husky that I've ever owned. All my saws, so I should do a video going through this someday. Of all the saws I own, I only ever bought 3 of them new. That's the Makita DCS 460, the Dolmar 7900 and the 880. They were all purchased new. Everything else has been purchased second hand. It was generally whatever I could get cheap. The only exception there, I guess, is this 288 clone. I never owned a Husky because I just never come across them. Just not as common to find them around in that reasonable price range, basically second hand. This 357 come up. It's a 357 XP. It's an early one. It was built in 2000. It's pretty good. It's got a lot of small damage. Little plastics broken. The throttle lock's broken. The anti-vibe system in it is had it. There's too much side-to-side wobble. However, I have run it and it runs very well. Piston cylinder, all that's good. Carb's good. Most of the saw's okay. There is some damage to the magnesium side casing because it was owned by a tree lopper or a tree service guy, and I think it cut a lot of palm trees in its life. But yeah, I'll go through this thing over the course of the next couple of weeks and clean it up, and then I can run it. So yeah, there's a few new things laying around. I don't need any of these things, but you tend to just keep buying them. It's just a bit of a hobby. I buy them and try and fix them and then see what happens with them from there. Yeah, that's the basics for today, so we'll just leave it at that.